as we traveled back home en route to Kampala, you come across corpses of defeated soldiers of the General Amin supporters lying on the streets. Corpses were not removed all the way. It's about 170 miles from the border to the capital. And it gave you a kind of sadness and feeling, asking questions, why does it always happen? Done by the same people to this fellow countrymen. But of course, that is the tragedy of dictatorship and suppression of one's people. My first thought of when I landed in Britain was of a sigh of relief. Certainly, I was relieved in that, by accident, I will only die of natural death. I know, because I had studied in this country, I know the democratic system of this country and the rights of individuals, that no physical harm would come to me deliberately by anybody or by government authority. So it was a sigh of relief for a time until the rest followed.
In 1992, refugee policy is to be standardized throughout Europe. While many people are talking about the business potential of 1992, few are looking at the human rights issues. Current developments indicate that Europe is to become far more restrictive towards refugees. After 1992, there may be no place for people like the four in this program.
Allende's presidential victory in Chile in 1970 opened perhaps one of the most dynamic periods in Chilean history. It was a period where there was hope, where there was expectations. It was a period of utopia. People were very eager to learn, eager to discuss about everything, politics, religion, philosophy, everything. It was a period of great opportunities for very many people, and especially for the underprivileged. I was the first member of the family to go to a secondary school. I would have even gone to the university if it hadn't been for the coup d'etat later on.
When I came back from exile, where I was in Kenya in '79, it was a feeling of coming out of bondage and feeling free and wanting to be free, which a situation you did not have in that country of exile. And you felt quite relieved, quite excited to go back and be a man of yourself among equals. That was the kind of feeling that strikes you as soon as you feel you are going back, because you feel you are liberated. The term refugee no longer applies to you.
To start with, at the beginning of Solidarity, no one really could believe that something like that happened. It was just impossible. You see, what people expected was that, the least thing will be that all these workers in shipyard, they will be arrested and harassed. And worst thing would happen, that Soviets could invade, and everyone would feel sorry, you see. So if they didn't crash this trade, they made this political agreement, with workers. It was something entirely new, a new factor in the situation. The workers were somehow let into the political stage. Martial law, when it was imposed, well, for me it started with a visit of two gentlemen. One was a soldier with a semi-automatic gun, quite a big one, and the second was a policeman in plain clothes. And the policeman told me that I was interned, and well, I was stunned. I just didn't. I felt that there's something dangerous going on because of this soldier, this gun, and the policeman, he didn't look very pleasant. But I didn't understand what it was about. And first thing to ask was, well, what about my son? He was 8 years old. He was in bed at the time, and they didn't know about my son. They just didn't study my case, I think, well enough.
The illegal occupation of South Africa affected me in many ways. One, as a student, it really hurt me a lot because of the Bantu, the so-called Bantu education system, which is designed, to produce or to educate the black man to become one day a servant of his master, which is the Afrikaners or the Boers. And by that way, really, it actually teach the people of Namibia only those cultures of the intruders, which are the Boers. We are deprived of our own histories, the belief of our ancestors, what they have been fighting for between the wars against the German rule till the time when the Afrikaners come and take over from the Germans. I mean, this type of history, you'll never find it in Namibia. All what we're being taught is about how Jan van Riebeeck came into Cape Town and how he get to Namibia and so on, or how the British involved or inspired the South Africans or the Boers to take over from the Germans.
Well, I was a member of a political group before the coup d'etat, not during Allende. And after the coup d'etat, everything was illegal. And I was asked whether I wanted to carry on working in this group, underground. So I said yes. But my work was very, very little. I did some propaganda work here and there. I raised funds and food for people in prison, things like that. Not very much, very little. But I was arrested, accused not only of being a member of this political party, but also being a leader of, as I say, subversive terrorist group. That was a small city, only 70,000 inhabitants. I mean, I had nothing to do with weapons or bombs, nothing like that. But once arrested, we were taken to an interrogation center. I didn't know anything about that. I knew many things were happening in Chile by then, but somehow you don't believe it could happen to you.
I was one of the very few civil servants who had access to the president in confidence at any time without the supervision or the presence of other ministers. And so efforts to assassinate me were made on several occasions. Once I was driving in very early morning towards the north of Uganda, where the president was holding a rally that afternoon, and I was ambushed on the road. Fortunately, I had Tanzanian's bodyguard in my car, and also because it would have been very dangerous and very fatal indeed to murder a Tanzanian soldier by a UNLF soldier So I was saved on that occasion, but I suppose there was a plan, as I discovered, to wait for my return. Fortunately, I did not return to Kampala by the same route. In fact, I did not return on the same day. Instead, I decided to go east and stayed there 2 days. But a fellow Ugandan who had the resemblance and was driving a similar car to mine was gunned down by a machine gun fire on the outskirts of the suburbs of Kampala on his way back to Kampala.
I was asked to sign a declaration that I ceased or I stopped any activities against the state. And because I didn't think I carried anything like that, I didn't want to put my signature because I understood it is self-incrimination. But my choice was either to put this signature or to go to an internment camp for a long, long time, as many people went. And I have to say, most of my friends who were interned with me, they didn't put their signatures. But then I thought that as a single parent, my job is to take care of my child. And it's my first obligation, and it's what I did.
While I was working in a bank, I only worked for 1 year, as I mentioned earlier. And during that year, it was 1984, the oppressed system of South Africa implemented the Conscription Act, that every man from the age of 16 to 35 have to register to do the compulsory army. And from 35 up to around about 40 or 50 or 45, they have to go to the commando. And as a matter of fact, firstly, I take it as a joke, because I was quite sure that I will never go to the army. Because my principles, and which is, I believe, the general Namibian belief, is once you join the South African army, you are going to serve their interest.
I was taken to this interrogation center, put in a cell, and then people came in with machine guns, and they put me in not electric chair, I was applied electric shock, but massive. And the interesting thing is that they don't ask you any question. Well, general things, but I'm not much interested in the answers. Just applying these electric shocks. And I learned later on that they call it softening the detainee. You have to soften them, and by doing that, it's torturing them. And then you are put on a cell, and a day later, you are taken out for proper interrogations. And they put pressure on you, psychological pressure. They make you believe that you are lost, that they really can do nasty things to you. And well, I hadn't done very little, so I couldn't say I was a leader. I couldn't say I had weapons or I had a bomb, things like that. Nothing. But perhaps only because I was a member of this political group, they thought potentially, this person is dangerous. So they fabricated a whole thing. They said I was a leader, or one of the leaders, of a small, subversive, as they say, terrorist group. And then sentenced to 18 years in prison.
Many people were hiding and needed help. And some of them were my friends, and I just couldn't turn my back to them only because I had a son, because everyone had a child or a family. So it was not a justification to do nothing, not to help friends, not to do what you are expected to do. So first I tried to reconcile, not to be involved very heavily, but whenever I could help, I tried to help. And, well, it was enough to be arrested again. And this time it was not that easy. It was not as easy as it was the first time, because they just refused to put my son under proper care.
After some few time, I heard from my friends and relatives who were staying in Otjiwarongo at that moment that the military police was behind me. They were looking for me, and it was a warning to me, because I knew that once they got me, then I'm in a jail. They will torture or they will imprison me. And I know that whatever I'm going to do, it will be pretty difficult, because the South Africans are quite hard. I mean, this decision are being taken or passed within Pretoria, and if you are in a court, you know that you are fighting against that country, or against that law, which is the South African law. And that led to the decision that I have to decide to leave Namibia.
Soon after, a team of interrogators came and interrogated me with caution and advice that I should withdraw from the government, and that very many good things were to come if I withdrew now and joined what would come over after the present government was overthrown. But when I didn't, then I was charges were faked, and I was brought to court.
And I remember also being annoyed by policemen who interrogated me, and knowing that I was worried about what's going on with my son. He could phone his home and talk to his daughter. And he said that she was the same age as my son, and asking her whether she had supper, whether she was going to bed, and so and so. And I learned from other women in the camp that they were treated in the same way, that it was a sort of standard treatment for mothers of young children to make them feel very bad. And it was exactly what I felt. I just couldn't imagine before that the sort of psychological torment is possible. I thought it's just sort of imagination, but it is possible. You can feel very, very bad.
The one thing I can complain about prison is about food, the diet, and it was terrible. I don't think I was ever satisfied in the 3 years I was in prison. I was always a bit hungry, and you always wanted to eat a bit more. The very last year, I think, food was really, really bad, and you were bound to get certain illness, and I got tuberculosis at the end of the prison. I also remember for 2 years I lost all the nails of my fingers. That was the first year. All of them, they went. And the second year I lost both the fingers nail and the toes nails. I got swollen fingers, things like that. Also because of the coldness. It was so cold inside, in winter. Once there, I found out that the stories I had heard before, but somehow I couldn't believe them, were actually true. All about torture, all about killings, the way the whole apparatus, government apparatus, political and repressive apparatus was working. It was true. And I felt amazed by what actually had happened.
In 2 weeks' time, I was asked again to come to police, and then I was given a passport, and with advice to use it as soon as possible. That means to leave the country. To leave the country. And then it was quite a bit of a shock, because I have to tell you, I hadn't left Poland before, never. That means I'd never been abroad for different reasons, but it doesn't matter. I had to decide what to do now. So what I did, I bought a map of Europe to look what it is like, where I was supposed to go. Of course, I knew about the European countries quite a lot, from literature, from press, from movies, but I never experienced being in any of them. And what I did, I wrote a few letters to a few embassies, explaining my situation and asking for a visa, I mean for asylum. And Norway was the first country which answered. In Trondheim, I was welcomed by two ladies. One of them spoke Polish. And I was taken care, me and my son, in such a way that it's difficult to forget. It was a lot of personal involvement on the side of these people who tried to arrange things for me. I was put into hotel for a few days, and after a few days I was given a key to my apartment. I mean, it was not exactly mine, but I was given the opportunity to buy it with a loan guaranteed by the state.
Refugee status means that Wisła is protected by the Norwegian government, safe in the knowledge that she will not be deported back to Poland.
Early in the morning, we set off, and we walk. And the thing is, we have been starting that whole part of Namibia and Botswana. You know, we have been studying the map, trying to calculate how long it will take us, and so on. So really, we are facing some difficulties because it was quite a very dangerous area, because it's quite desert, you know. It's where the Kalahari Desert is, you know, bordering to Botswana. And there are some wild animals like lions and so on. And even, not to mention the South African police and soldiers, because they are patrolling that area, you see. So it was really a question of nerves, you know. We have to be quiet, to walk as fast as we can. And the problem is, you know, if you lose your track, then you might go the wrong direction. And fortunately enough, we made it. The Dukwi refugee camp is based in between Francistown and Mau. There are around about 7,000 refugees who are coming from Zimbabwe, South Africa, Namibia, and Angola. The Botswana government given me my political asylum just on my arrival. And presently, while I'm even here, I'm having a Botswana passport. Although it's not a Botswana passport, it's being regulated by the United Nations Council for Namibia, which was issued in Botswana by the President's office. Being a refugee in Botswana, there is not really that lot of restriction, because I can work and I can study and I can do anything what I want, as long as I'm not, you know, violating their law.
Chiwe has full political asylum in Botswana, as recognised by the United Nations. There are 12 to 15 million refugees in the world. 95% of them are given asylum by third world countries. Only a very small proportion apply for asylum to Western Europe.
When I got to the airport, I had a bundle of Ugandan currency, as a matter of fact. But also, I think tribalism came in, because I could have missed the plane, but the in charge of that team was a woman of my tribe, unknown to me, but I think blood is thicker than water, and that must have driven her instinct to help me, because the clerks had actually refused to accept my ticket, and that they were no longer handling people traveling on the London-bound plane. So this woman, and God bless her, helped me in such a way that tactics were created to delay the plane.
With 1992 approaching, British policy is becoming increasingly restrictive towards refugees. In 1980, 64% of asylum seekers were granted refugee status. By 1987, this figure had dropped to 13%.
The reply took more 6 months, and about December of that year, I was given a negative reply as my Christmas present, and I was given 14 days in which to pack my things and go all to appeal. I had never gone through this experience. I was shocked. My children went to tears. I resisted tears, but friends tried to comfort me. It was all worthless, meaningless. I hated everybody, including myself. Frankly, I panicked. I didn't know what to do. But then the United Kingdom Immigration Advisory Service got in touch with me and advised that they had sent an appeal on the decision back to the Home Office and gave me an appointment, which was a sign of relief, and that meant that as long as I appealed, I could remain. But then my family were required to pack and go, and the date arranged for them to go was to be the 23rd of December and reach Uganda the 24th December. They would have been locked up the whole period of Christmas and tortured. I was very confused. I didn't know what to do, and the UKAS advised that I could consult my Member of Parliament, which I did, and in spite of the crowded period of Christmas, he managed to get in touch with the Home Office, and a stop for their removal was directed. So we spent Christmas together.
In 1987, the British government abolished the automatic right of an MP to intervene against a refugee's deportation. The right of an asylum seeker to remain in Britain while appealing against a deportation order was also abolished. These were the only two safeguards which prevented Joseph and his family from being deported.
I did not think, having offered my life to defend Britain in World War II, that they would let me down now that I was in need of their support. So it was the obvious choice that I stayed here. Of course, I was wrong, because I've never been granted political asylum.
Exceptional leave to remain is a restrictive status which denies the security necessary for a refugee to rebuild their life. Every year, Joseph has to apply for his status to be renewed, knowing that if refused, he and his family will be deported, even though most refugees will gladly return home as soon as it's safe.
I'm going back to Chile very soon. I'm going back actually in December. I was applying to go back for the last 2 years, but I never got a proper answer. Now the Chilean government has announced that all exiles can go back. So I went to the Chilean embassy and they gave me a proper passport and they told me I can go back without any problem. And everybody in Chile, well, I mean my friends and relatives, parents are waiting. 11 years since I last saw them. So it will be a very big occasion. I can't imagine how the whole thing is going to be.
In 1992, refugee policy is to be standardised throughout Europe. With its increasingly unwelcome stance, Britain is leading the way towards a European refugee policy. By 1992, there will be a wall around Europe designed to protect our prosperity. Will it also keep out those in need of asylum?